Hi friends! We're going to start off with brows, so grab your brush or whatever product you use. And we want a bold brow for this look, so we're basically going to go in and fill in any gaps in the hair just to give them a more full look. I personally use powder to fill in my brows. And I start from the front and go all the way to the ends. Once I fill in any sparse areas on the bottom, I'll do the same thing along the top of the brow. And then when I'm done, I'll fill in the brow with product. Now I'm going to go in with a very thin flat brush and grab my concealer, and I'm just going to carve my brows out. Think of your concealer as an eraser in this step. So basically, we're just going in with the concealer and making cleaner lines. Once you've cleaned up your brows a little bit, go ahead and start blending the concealer onto your eyelid. You want to make sure you go ahead and blend it out while your concealer is still damp, that way it's easier to work with. Now we're going to repeat the same step on the top of the brow. And once you've carved it out, go ahead and blend that concealer in on the top as well. Don't forget to blend in between the brows. I'm going to go ahead and do my other one off camera. Now we move on to foundation. I recommend doing it in sections, so I start on one cheek and then move to the other, and then usually chin, above my upper lip, nose, and then forehead. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. I just feel like if your foundation dries down fast, then it's best to work in sections just to avoid getting patchy. Don't forget to blend down the neck a little bit. Moving on to concealer, you don't really need much at all. I'm just putting a little bit under my eyes to cover any dark circles I have. We do also want our bright under eye area to make sure the colors we put on later are more pigmented. Time to powder our face. When you put on your powder, make sure you put on a whole lot. The more dry you are going onto the field, the better your makeup will look coming off the field. And we are powdering our entire face. Moving on to contour. This is less of contour and more just bringing some warmth back to the face. So I'm applying it in the hollows of my cheeks, and I do a little bit of nose contour if you want to call it that. Like I said, it's really just to bring more warmth back into the face. We don't want like a super snatched contour. And then we're going to contour our nose just a little bit. You'll see at the end I do blur it out with some powder. So don't worry about having it perfect. Also, everyone's noses are obviously a different shape. This is how I do mine. I just do contour on the sides of my nose, a tiny bit across the tip, and underneath like the bottom of the nostril area. But that's just what I do. You should do what's best suited for your nose shape. And then I put some powder on top of it just to soften the look a little bit. Now we're on to the side of the palette that says color splashes. These are our more vibrant colors. This palette doesn't have shade names, so if you need to pause it to see which ones I'm using, do that. But basically I use an orange and a red. We're going to use it one at a time. So this is the orange. We're just going to buff this out. I'm putting this on the sides of my forehead, the temple area, and the tops of my cheekbones. So keeping it within the top part of the face. Doing it on both sides, of course. And then I put a very tiny bit on the bridge of my nose. At this point, you can go in with powder and blend it out a little bit. You want to make sure it hasn't traveled too far to the center of the face. The orange should stay more on the outsides of the face. And then we're going to go in with that red shade, and that's going to stay right on the hairline, basically from the top of the cheekbone to the temple area. Here's where we're at so far. Going back in with our powder, like I said, we want this to stay from the cheekbones up, so you can see it's kind of going too far down my face. I'm just going to use the powder to basically erase a little bit of the orange off the bottom half of my face. And then we don't want that harsh line, so I'm just blending the two together a little bit. Here you can see the difference between the two sides. So we just clean it up and then blend up and into it. Just like that. Now we're going to do one of the best parts, which is highlight. Grab a small brush, and I put highlight on my nose, my forehead, my cheekbones, my chin, and my upper lip. Where you put your highlight is kind of preference, but just keep in mind we are fire, so we should be glowy. And go ahead and set with setting spray. I do this multiple times throughout the makeup process. The more you spray, the better you're going to look coming off the field, I promise you. So by the time I was able to finish this tutorial, the sun had gone down, so there's a change in lighting, I'm sorry. But we're going to put this gold all under the brow bone and in the inner corner of the eye. Grab a fluffy brush, and in the warming up side of this palette, we're going to go in with this shade of orange. We're going to put this right above the crease of the eye. Try not to get any on the lid. Also, feel free to pause when I'm pointing at eyeshadows in the palette because there's no shade names, so I just kind of have to point them out. Grabbing an even smaller brush, they'll get smaller each time, and we're going to go in with this darker shade of orange. We're going to blend the shades out less each time, so the closer to the crease we get, the darker the colors will get. Also, as we move on to these darker shades, you want to start bringing the eyeshadow into more of a wing shape. Grabbing a smaller brush and going in with a darker shade of red. Blending out less and less each time. So there should be a gradient going from the crease of the eye up from dark to light. Also, when you're doing the wing shape, you want to make sure we're not passing the eyebrow. Do not go past the end of the eyebrow. We're keeping the wing shape contained to the eyelid. Grab a makeup wipe and wipe the product off the eyelid before we cut the crease. Now grab a super skinny flat brush, and we're going to cut right above the crease so that way when our eyes are open we can still see all the eyeshadow on our eyes. Sometimes if you cut too low, the eyeshadow tends to kind of disappear into the folds of our eyelids. Once you cut your crease into this wing shape, go ahead and cover the lid with concealer. Then blend that concealer out into the outer corner. Here's what it should look like so far. Now grab your brush, and we're just going to cover the eyelid in the same shade of gold that we used as a highlight on both the brow bone and the face. Now grab a skinny brush. It doesn't really matter what kind, we're just going to draw a quick line from the outer corner of our eye up to the tip of the wing. Going back in with another smaller brush, we just want to make sure we're keeping that dimension we talked about earlier. So here I'm just touching up the darker shades above where we cut the crease. And going in with a very thin brush, we're going to add the tiniest bit of black. We just want to add a tiny bit of darkness, nothing too crazy. Okay, we got to switch over to the other eye because I did the wing on the other eye off camera on accident, but basically the next step is to just draw a wing. This doesn't even have to be neat. The only part that has to be clean is the bottom of the wing. The top part on the eyelid itself, once we fill it in, we're going to blur it out with some eyeshadow anyway. So grab a small fluffy brush, and I'm just going in with black eyeshadow, and I'm just blurring the wing out. It's best to do this when your eyeliner is still a little bit damp, so that way it blends easier. Now we're going to move to the bottom eyelid, and we're just going to line it with that dark red from earlier and a tiny bit of black on the outer corners. Here's both eyes so far. We're almost done. I grabbed that same brush we just used to blur out the wing, and I'm going to go in with that same red from earlier, the dark red, and we're just going to blur out the top of that wing a tiny bit more. Now we have a little bit more of a loose glitter. We're going to add that on top of the gold that's already on the eyelid. More setting spray. And then once you do that, go ahead and add more glitter just to make sure it really sticks. Go ahead and put your lashes, mascara, and lipstick on. And when you put the gold on your lips, you're going to put it only in the center of the lips. And here's your complete look. Have a good show.